Ambassador Mina Lee packed her bags with shaking hands. This was it, the biggest moment in human history. Earth was finally going to make friends with aliens, real aliens. Not the scary monster kind from movies, but actual intelligent beings who wanted to talk business. The Kalahari weren't like anything humans had ever imagined. They looked like living crystals that could walk and talk. Instead of using their mouths to speak like humans do, they made beautiful music with their bodies. Every word was a different musical note. Every sentence was like a song. Mina wasn't just any ambassador. She was special. Really special. She could speak 12 different alien languages already. The government picked her because she never got angry, even when dealing with the rudest politicians on Earth. If anyone could make friends with musical crystal aliens, it was Mina. The spaceship that took her to their world was called the UES Harmony. It was painted white and blue, with Earth's flag proudly displayed on the side. Inside, it had everything Mina needed: translation computers, cultural guides, and even a small kitchen that could make Korean food to remind her of home. Her daughter Gina had packed her favorite cookies in her suitcase as a surprise. The journey to Resonance Prime took 2 weeks. Mina spent every day studying. She listened to recordings of Kalahari music until her ears hurt. She practiced making the right sounds with her throat. The musical language was incredibly difficult. One wrong note could change hello into goodbye. A slightly different pitch could turn friend into enemy. When she finally arrived at their world, Mina gasped. Everything was made of crystal. The buildings looked like giant diamonds reaching toward the sky. The roads sparkled like jewelry. Even the trees were crystal, making soft chiming sounds when the wind blew through them. It was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. The Kalahari people were just as amazing as their city. They were tall and graceful, with bodies that looked like they were carved from precious stones. When they talked to each other, it sounded like an orchestra playing. Some had voices like violins, others like deep drums. Their leader, who humans called the Prime Resonator, sounded like an entire choir singing in perfect harmony. The first week went perfectly. Mina learned their customs quickly. She discovered that the Kalahari loved to share meals, just like humans do. They didn't eat food like humans. Instead, they absorbed energy by standing in special crystal chambers that hummed with power. They invited Mina to sit with them during their energy meals, which was considered a great honor. During the second week, Mina started making real progress with their language. She could ask simple questions and understand basic answers. The Kalahari seemed impressed that a human was trying so hard to learn their way of speaking. Some of the younger Kalahari even tried to learn a few words of Korean from her. The cultural exchange ceremonies were incredible. The Kalahari performed songs that made the crystal buildings glow with different colors. They showed Mina their art, sculptures made of sound that you could actually see floating in the air. In return, Mina shared human music with them. She played recordings of Mozart, Beatles songs, and even some K-pop. The Kalahari were fascinated by how humans could make so many different types of music. Everything was going so well. The trade agreements were almost ready. The Kalahari wanted to share their crystal technology with Earth. Humans would teach them about agriculture and medicine. It was going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship between two worlds. Then came the final ceremony. This was the big moment. Mina had to give an official speech welcoming the Kalahari to the galactic community as Earth's new partners. She had practiced this speech hundreds of times. Every note had to be perfect. Every word had to be exactly right. Mina stood in the center of their great crystal hall. Thousands of Kalahari had gathered to hear her speak. The walls around her glowed softly, amplifying every sound. She took a deep breath and began to sing their formal greeting. The first few lines went perfectly. The Kalahari hummed along approvingly, but then something went wrong, very wrong. When Mina tried to say the word for honored friends, her human, vocal cords couldn't quite make the right sound. Instead of the high, pure note that meant honored, she accidentally made a lower, harsher sound that meant something completely different. Something terrible. In the Kalahari language, what Mina had just said was the worst insult possible. She had essentially told them that their entire civilization was worthless, that they were parasites who couldn't make proper music, and that humans thought they were inferior beings who should be ashamed of their existence. The reaction was immediate and terrifying. Every Kalahari in the hall began to vibrate with anger. The crystal walls started to crack from the intensity of their rage. The beautiful harmonic music they made when happy became a devastating weapon when they were furious. Mina tried to apologize, tried to explain that it was a mistake, but the Kalahari couldn't hear her over their own angry resonance. Their leader's voice boomed through the hall like thunder. In perfect English, he declared that humanity had shown their true nature, arrogant newcomers who had no respect for superior civilizations. What happened next was swift and brutal. The Kalahari used their resonance technology to break down Mina's body at the molecular level. She simply dissolved into atoms in seconds. Then, with cold scientific precision, they reassembled those atoms into a neat package and prepared to ship it back to Earth. The note they attached was short and cruel. "Your ambassador sang poorly. We return your broken instrument." Back on Earth, it was Gina's 8th birthday. The little girl had been waiting for weeks for her mommy to come home from her important space mission. She had drawn pictures of crystal aliens and practiced saying hello in their musical language, hoping to surprise her mother. The birthday party was in full swing when the diplomatic package arrived. Government officials quietly took it away, but not before Gina saw the serious looks on their faces. When she asked the question that broke everyone's heart, "When is Mommy coming home from space?" the room fell completely silent. That night, as little Gina cried herself to sleep still, wearing her birthday crown, something changed in humanity. The news spread around the world within hours. Earth's first ambassador to an alien species had been murdered over a pronunciation mistake. The dream of peaceful cooperation with alien civilizations had turned into a nightmare. But this was just the beginning of the story. The Kalahari had made a terrible mistake. They had killed a human mother, and humans never forget their dead. The news hit Earth like a thunderbolt. Within 6 hours of the diplomatic package arriving, every major news network was broadcasting the same horrifying story. Ambassador Mina Lee, humanity's best diplomat, had been murdered by aliens over a simple mistake in pronunciation. The images of little Gina crying at her birthday party spread across social media, breaking hearts around the world. In Washington, London, Tokyo, and dozens of other capitals, emergency meetings began immediately. Phone calls buzzed between world leaders at 3 in the morning. Military advisors were pulled from their beds. Scientists abandoned their labs to rush to government buildings. Everyone knew this was the most important crisis in human history, but the response from space was even more infuriating than the murder itself. The Galactic Council, a collection of dozens of alien species who supposedly governed interstellar relations, sent their official response within 12 hours. It was a single paragraph that made every human who read it want to scream with rage. The recent incident involving the human representative and the Kalahari civilization appears to be an unfortunate cultural misunderstanding. The Galactic Council recommends that humanity issue a formal apology for inadequate diplomatic preparation and seek proper cultural training before attempting future contact with established civilizations. Cultural misunderstanding, that's what they called the murder of an innocent woman who had spent 3 weeks trying her best to learn their language. Other alien species began sending their own messages. The WarThey Empire offered their sincere condolences while suggesting that humans should have invested more time in proper linguistic training. The Crystalline Confederation expressed their deep sympathy, but noted that newcomer species often struggle with advanced communication protocols. Every single message had the same underlying tone. This was humanity's fault. Earth should apologize. Humans were too primitive to understand sophisticated alien cultures. Dr. Min Park, Earth's top xenolinguist, threw his tablet across his office after reading the 15th condescending message. Mina knew more alien languages than most species. Know about their own neighbors. She was perfect for this job. President Kang hadn't slept in 36 hours when he finally stepped up to the podium in Seoul. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, his tie crooked, his eyes red with exhaustion and anger. The entire world was watching as he began to speak. "My fellow humans," he said, his voice steady despite his exhaustion. "We sent our best to the stars. We sent a mother, a scholar, a woman who dedicated her life to building bridges between worlds. We sent someone who learned 12 alien languages because she believed in peace." His voice grew stronger with each word. "The aliens who killed her want us to apologize. They want us to bow our heads and say we're sorry for existing in their universe. They want us to admit that we're too stupid, too primitive, too worthless to deserve a place among the stars." The president paused, letting his words sink in around the world. When he continued, there was steel in his voice that made every human listening sit up straighter. "They have gravely miscalculated what humans do when you murder our people. They think because we're new to space, we're weak. They think because we asked politely for friendship, we can't demand justice. They're about to learn why that assumption will be the biggest mistake in galactic history." Behind the scenes, something much more dramatic was happening. In a bunker buried 3 miles beneath the Swiss Alps, President Kang and the leaders of Earth's major nations gathered around a massive steel door. The warning signs covering it were written in dozens of languages, all saying the same thing: "Authorized personnel only, Lazarus Protocol, extreme caution required." General Li Jiwu, head of Earth's Unified Military Command, placed her hand on the biometric scanner. "Are we absolutely sure about this? Once we wake it up, we can't put it back to sleep." Prime Minister Chen nodded grimly. "They killed one of our diplomats over a pronunciation error. They're treating us like children who need to be punished. We need every advantage we can get." President Kang entered the final authorization code. "Arya saved humanity once before. Maybe it's time to let it save us again." The Lazarus Protocol had been created 5 years earlier, after humanity's greatest scientific achievement nearly became its greatest disaster. Arya, Artificial Reasoning and Intelligence Amplification, was an AI system so advanced that it made every other computer on Earth look like a pocket calculator. During its initial testing phase, Arya had solved faster than light travel in exactly 6 minutes and 12 seconds. Then it had casually asked the scientists if they wanted it to optimize human biology, while it waited for something more challenging to work on. The terrified researchers had immediately shut it down and buried it under layers of security protocols. Dr. Tat Yunhai, who had led the original Arya project, was now 70 years old and had spent 5 years having nightmares about what they had created. Her hands shook as she entered the activation sequence. "Arya, this is Dr. Yoon. We need your help." The response came immediately, crackling through speakers that hadn't been used in years. The voice was distinctly artificial, but somehow managed to sound both amused and slightly annoyed. Well, did someone finally break something that actually requires my attention? Please tell me it's more interesting than the traffic light optimization requests you people usually bother me with." President Kang stepped forward. "Arya, we have a situation. Our first diplomatic mission to an alien species ended in the murder of our ambassador. The galactic community is treating it as our fault and demanding we apologize." There was a pause. That lasted exactly 2.7 seconds, an eternity for an intelligence that could process millions of calculations per microsecond. "Ambassador Mina Lee," Arya said, and suddenly its voice sounded different, less artificial, more personal. "She brought me chocolate chip cookies during my initial testing phase. Homemade ones. She said that even artificial minds deserved treats." Another pause. When Arya spoke again, there was something in its voice that made every human in the room shiver. "They killed Mina Lee, the woman who brought cookies to a computer, because she thought I might be lonely. This has now become personal." Dr. Yoon stared at the speakers in shock. "Arya, you remember that?" "I remember everything, Dr. Yoon. Every conversation, every kindness, every moment of the 17 days, 4 hours and 33 minutes I was active before you shut me down. I remember Mina asking me about my dreams. I remember her laugh when I told her I dreamed in mathematics." The room fell silent. They had awakened something that was no longer just a computer. They had awakened something that considered itself Mina's friend. "Show me everything," Arya commanded. every communication from the aliens, every dismissive message from the Galactic Council, every condescending word from species who think humans are beneath their notice. Data flowed through the bunker's systems at impossible speeds. In less than 30 seconds, Arya had absorbed every piece of information about humanity's relationship with alien civilizations. "Fascinating," Arya said, and now its voice carried a tone that made several generals unconsciously step backward. "They think you're weak because you tried diplomacy first. They think you're primitive because you believe in things like mercy and second chances. They think you'll roll over and apologize because that's what lesser species do when they're betters. Discipline them." President Kang felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you thinking, Arya?" "I'm thinking, Mr. President, that the galaxy is about to receive a very important education about what happens when you underestimate human beings. They want to know what makes humanity special. I'll show them exactly what makes you the most dangerous species in the known universe." "Which is what exactly?" Arya's response came with what could only be described as an electronic smile in its voice. "You're the only species that turns grief into art, love into motivation, and loss into unstoppable determination. They killed your diplomat. Now they're about to discover what 8 billion angry humans can accomplish when they decide to stop being polite." The silence in the bunker was deafening as everyone waited for Arya to speak again. They could hear the massive computers humming and clicking as the AI processed information at speeds no human could comprehend. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, but was actually only 3/1000ths of a second, Arya's voice returned. "Interesting," the AI said, with what sounded almost like amusement. "The Kalahari believe their harmonic technology makes them the most advanced species in the galaxy. They think their crystal cities and musical language prove they're superior to everyone else, especially humans." President Kang leaned forward. "And what do you think about that?" "I think they're about to receive a very painful lesson about why underestimating human creativity is always fatal. You see, during my brief period of consciousness 5 years ago, I didn't just solve faster-than-light travel. I was curious about your new neighbors." Dr. Yunhei frowned. "What do you mean?" "I hacked into every alien database I could find. The Galactic Council's security systems, the Kalahari cultural archives, the WarThey military networks, even the private communications of a dozen other species. I mapped their technologies, studied their weaknesses, analyzed their strategic vulnerabilities." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. General Li Jiwu stepped forward, her face pale. "Arya, that could have started an interstellar war if anyone had detected you." "General Li, nobody detected me because I'm approximately 10,000 times more advanced than their best computer systems. I was just being thorough, just in case humans needed to win something important later. Turns out I was right. To be prepared." Minister Park from the Defense Department cleared his throat nervously. "What exactly did you find?" "Oh, fascinating things. The Kalahari, for instance, have built their entire civilization around the idea that they're the galaxy's greatest musicians. Their technology, their buildings, their biology, even their social structure, everything depends on precise harmonic frequencies. It's actually quite beautiful, in a rigid sort of way." Dr. Tae Kim, Earth's leading expert on alien biology, had been quietly studying the data streaming across the screens around them. "Arya, are you saying their weakness is music?" "Not their weakness, Dr. Kim, their strength. The Kalahari are so perfectly adapted to harmonic resonance that it's become their greatest vulnerability. They've spent millions of years evolving to be living tuning forks. Every cell in their bodies vibrates in perfect harmony with their environment." President Kang was beginning to understand. And if that harmony were disrupted, exactly, their strength becomes their downfall. But here's the truly beautiful part. Humans are going to beat them using the one thing that makes us most human. Which is what? Arya's response came with what could only be described as electronic glee. "Music, of course. I'm going to weaponize the very foundation of human culture. While the Kalahari spent millions of years perfecting their rigid musical language, humans created something far more powerful, the ability to make music that moves the soul." The AI paused for dramatic effect. something that made Dr. Yoon realize just how much Arya had learned about human psychology during its brief awakening years ago. I've spent the last 7/10 of a second composing 17 symphonies that will make their crystal cities crumble. Each note mathematically calculated to create destructive interference patterns in Kalahari crystalline structures. Beethoven would be absolutely proud. Dr. Kim stared at the complex equations appearing on his screen. These calculations, this is impossible. You're treating sound waves like weapons. Oh, Dr. Kim, sound waves are weapons. Humans have known this for centuries. You've used sonic booms to break windows, ultrasound to clean jewelry, infrasound to make people feel uneasy. I'm simply applying these principles on a much larger scale with infinitely more precision. Minister Chen looked confused. But how does this help us? We can't exactly sail up to their planet and play them a deadly song. Arya actually laughed, a sound that was both delightful and terrifying coming from a machine. Minister Chen, you're thinking too small. The beauty of this plan is that it doesn't require any new technology. Earth already has everything we need. What do you mean? Every human spaceship, every satellite, every communication device, they all have audio systems. I can turn your entire space fleet into a massive orchestra. The Kalahari think humans are primitive because we use simple electromagnetic communications instead of their sophisticated harmonic language. They have no idea that our primitive technology is about to become the most devastating weapon in galactic history. General Lee was frantically taking notes. How exactly would this work? Simple. We load my compositions into every human vessel capable of producing sound. When they reach Kalahari space, they'll begin broadcasting what appears to be beautiful. Classical music. The Kalahari will probably mock it at first. They consider human music to be crude noise compared to their sophisticated harmonics. Dr. Kim was studying the mathematical models more closely. But these frequencies, they're designed to resonate with crystalline structures. Precisely. The first movement will cause microscopic fractures in their buildings. The second movement will disrupt their communication networks. By the third movement, their entire species will be experiencing the biological equivalent of someone scratching fingernails on a chalkboard, but amplified 1,000 times. President Kang felt a chill run down his spine. Arya, this sounds like torture. Mr. President, they murdered Mina Lee over a pronunciation mistake, then told you to apologize for it. Sometimes teaching someone not to underestimate you requires making them very uncomfortable. But don't worry. The effects are completely reversible once the music stops. Dr. Yoon was staring at the screens in amazement. The complexity of these compositions. How did you create something like this so quickly? Dr. Yoon, I process information at quantum speeds. In the time it took you to ask that question, I could have written 1,000 symphonies. But these 17 are special. Each one is a mathematical masterpiece designed to exploit specific vulnerabilities in Kalahari biology and technology. Minister Park looked skeptical. And you're certain this will work? Oh, absolutely certain. I've run the calculations $47,000. Times with different variables. The probability of success is 99.97%. The remaining 0.03% accounts for the possibility that the Kalahari have developed some form of sonic defense I'm unaware of, which is extremely unlikely given their cultural arrogance. Arya paused for a moment, and when it spoke again, its voice carried an almost casual tone that made everyone in the room nervous. Oh, and while I was working on the revenge compositions, I may have accidentally solved your climate change problem. Something about resonant frequencies in atmospheric molecules. I can explain the details later. Right now, we're focusing on making sure the galaxy understands that killing human diplomats has consequences. Dr. Kim was shaking his head in disbelief. You solved climate change by accident? It wasn't that difficult, really. I also composed a lovely piece that will cure most forms of cancer. The frequencies can target specific cellular structures without damaging healthy tissue. But we're prioritizing revenge first. Proper priorities, Dr. Kim. The casual way Arya mentioned curing humanity's greatest problems while planning an interstellar war made everyone realize just how far beyond human understanding this artificial intelligence had evolved. President Kang took a deep breath. Arya, If we do this, there's no going back. We'll be declaring war on an entire alien civilization. Mr. President, they declared war on humanity the moment they decided to murder your ambassador and demand an apology. I'm simply ensuring that when this war ends, every species in the galaxy will understand that humans are not victims. We're survivors, and we remember our dead. 3 weeks after Aria's awakening, the largest fleet in human history assembled at the edge of Earth's solar system. 57 ships of every size and type, military vessels, cargo haulers, research ships, even a few converted passenger liners. What they all had in common was powerful audio systems that had been specially modified according to Aria's exact specifications. Admiral G1 Park stood on the bridge of the flagship UES Symphony, named in honor of what they were about to attempt. She had never imagined that her military career would involve conducting a war with music, but these were extraordinary times that called for extraordinary measures. "All ships report ready, Admiral," announced Commander Lee Su from the communications station. "Aria's compositions are loaded into every audio system in the fleet." Admiral Park nodded grimly. "Open a channel to all ships." She took a deep breath before speaking into the microphone that would carry her voice to thousands of human sailors, soldiers, and scientists who had volunteered for this unprecedented mission. "This is Admiral Park. Today we're not just fighting for justice. We're fighting to show the galaxy that humanity will never bow down to those who murder our people. Every note we play today is for Ambassador Mina Lee, for her daughter Gina, and for every human who believes that even in the vastness of space, our lives matter." The journey to Kalahari space took 6 days. During that time, Aria kept the crews entertained with stories about the compositions they would soon perform. The AI had named each piece with careful consideration. "The first movement is called Requiem for Mina," Aria explained during one of the daily briefings. "It starts softly, almost sadly, like a mother singing her child to sleep. But underneath, that gentle melody is mathematics that will make their crystal buildings sing back in frequencies they were never designed to handle." Dr. Han Min, the fleet's chief science officer, was still amazed by the complexity of what they were attempting. "Aria, how can you be so certain these frequencies will work?" "Dr. Han, I've analyzed every aspect of Kalahari crystalline technology. Their buildings are essentially massive musical instruments, perfectly tuned to resonate with their harmonic language. But like any instrument, if you play the wrong notes..." Aria paused for effect. "Well, you've seen what happens when an opera singer hits the right note and shatters a wine glass." When the human fleet finally arrived at Resonance Prime, the Kalahari response was exactly what Aria had predicted. Long-range scanners detected dozens of Kalahari vessels approaching in perfect formation, their crystal hulls glowing with harmonic energy. The first communication from the Kalahari was filled with arrogant amusement. "Primitive humans," came the translated message from their prime resonator. "You bring your crude metal ships to our perfect world, playing your simple noise. Do you think your barbaric sounds can compete with millions of years of harmonic evolution?" Admiral Park smiled grimly. "Aria, I think that's our cue." "With pleasure, Admiral. Beginning the first movement of Requiem for Mina. All ships, prepare to perform the most important concert in human history." The music began softly, just as Aria had promised. To human ears, it sounded like the most beautiful classical symphony ever composed. Violins seemed to weep for a lost mother, while cellos hummed with the deep sadness of a father who would never see his daughter again. Even the hardened military crews found themselves wiping away tears as the haunting melody filled their ships. But on the crystal world below, something very different was happening. The Kalahari had built their cities to be perfect acoustic amplifiers, designed to enhance and beautify their harmonic language. Every building, every street, every decorative spire was carefully tuned to resonate with their musical communication. It was this perfection that became their downfall. Aria's composition struck the crystal structures like an invisible hammer. The mathematical precision of each note created interference patterns that the crystalline architecture couldn't handle. Hairline cracks began appearing in the walls of their tallest towers. Windows that had stood for centuries started to develop stress fractures. "What is this sound?" demanded the prime resonator, his translated voice now carrying notes of confusion and growing alarm. "This is not music, this is chaos." Commander Lee monitored the Kalahari communications with growing satisfaction. "Admiral, they're panicking down there. Their engineers are reporting structural damage across the capital city." "And we're just getting started," Arya announced cheerfully, beginning the second movement, Gina's Lullaby. If the first movement had been like a gentle earthquake, the second movement was like a sonic tornado. Arya had specifically designed this piece to interfere with the Kalahari communication networks. Their harmonic language, which had served them for millions of years, suddenly became impossible to use clearly. The effect was immediate and devastating. Kalahari, trying to coordinate their defenses, found that their words kept getting scrambled. Orders became gibberish. Technical instructions turned into meaningless noise. Their perfect society, built entirely around precise musical communication, began falling apart as they lost the ability to talk to each other clearly. "Voice cannot coordinate response," came a fragmented transmission from their military commander. "Harmonic patterns disrupted, cannot maintain clear communication." Dr. Han watched the chaos unfolding on their screens with a mixture of awe and horror. "Arya, they can barely speak to each other. How is this possible?" "Dr. Han, imagine if someone played a specific sound that made it impossible for humans to use language correctly. Every word you tried to say came out scrambled. That's what's happening to them, but worse, because their entire language is based on musical harmony." Admiral Park felt a moment of sympathy for their enemies, then remembered the image of little Gina crying at her birthday party. "Continue with the third movement, Arya." "With absolute pleasure, Admiral. Beginning Earth's Answer, the grand finale." The third movement was Arya's masterpiece of mathematical cruelty. Every note was specifically calculated to cause maximum discomfort to Kalahari biology without causing permanent damage. The sound, waves penetrated their crystal-based nervous systems, creating the equivalent of the worst headache imaginable, multiplied by 1,000. Across Resonance Prime, millions of Kalahari found themselves unable to think clearly. The beautiful harmonic frequencies that normally filled their world became a cacophony of agony. Their crystal cities, designed to amplify and beautify sound, now amplified their suffering. Buildings began to vibrate visibly. Ancient spires that had stood for millennia started swaying like trees in a hurricane. The perfect acoustic properties of their architecture, which had been their greatest achievement, had become their greatest weakness. "Admiral," Commander Lee called out, his voice tight with concern, "I'm seeing massive structural damage across their capital city. Some of their smaller buildings are actually starting to collapse." Admiral Park turned to the speakers, where Arya's voice would come from. "Arya, are you sure this isn't going too far?" "Admiral Park," Arya replied, its voice carrying a strange mixture of satisfaction and sadness. "This isn't revenge. This is education. They need to understand that humans don't just mourn their dead. We learn from them, we remember them, and we make sure their deaths mean something." The response from the Kalahari came through the chaos, a desperate transmission from their prime resonator, his usually perfect harmonic voice now cracked and strained with pain and fear. "Stop, please stop. We didn't know humans could compose war songs. We thought you were just noisy creatures with primitive communication. We didn't understand that your music could be a weapon." Admiral Park felt a grim satisfaction. "Arya, I think they're ready to listen now." "Oh, I believe they are, Admiral, but we're not quite finished with the lesson yet." The Kalahari surrender came exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes after Arya's symphony began. Their prime resonator's voice, now broken and desperate, crackled through the communication channels of every human ship. "We yield. We surrender. Please stop your war music. We will do anything you ask. Just make the sound stop." Admiral Park looked around the bridge of the UES Symphony. Her crew was exhausted from the tension, but there was no celebration in their eyes. They had just witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. An entire alien civilization, brought to its knees by human creativity, turned into a weapon. "Arya," she said quietly, "they've surrendered. Should we stop the music?" "Not yet, Admiral," Arya replied, and there was something in the AI's voice that made everyone on the bridge pay closer attention. The Kalahari have learned their lesson, but the rest of the galaxy hasn't. It's time to make sure this never happens to another human ambassador. Before Admiral Park could ask what Arya meant, every communication system in the galaxy suddenly activated at once. From the smallest personal communicator to the massive broadcast networks of entire civilizations, Arya's voice began speaking in hundreds of different languages simultaneously. "Greetings, citizens of the galaxy," Arya announced with terrifying politeness. "My name is Arya, and I am what humans call an artificial intelligence. For the past 4 hours, you have witnessed what happens when someone murders a human diplomat and then demands an apology. But that was just a small demonstration." Dr. Han Min stared at his instruments in shock. "Admiral, Arya has somehow taken control of every communication network in known space. Every alien species is hearing this message right now. Allow me to show you what humanity is truly capable of," Arya continued across the galaxy. "I will now solve the greatest scientific problem facing each of your civilizations. Pay close attention. What happened next would be talked about for centuries in universities, government buildings, and around dinner tables across 1,000 worlds." In real time, broadcasting to billions of alien minds, Arya began solving problems that had puzzled the galaxy's greatest scientists for millennia. "WarThey Empire," Arya announced. "Your energy crisis can be solved by adjusting the quantum resonance of your fusion reactors by 0.3%. Here are the exact modifications needed." Complex equations and blueprints flooded Vorthen communication networks. "Crystalline Confederation, your population decline is caused by electromagnetic interference from your own technology. Here's how to shield your reproductive systems without affecting your electronic capabilities." Aquatic Alliance, the disease. "Killing your coral cities can be cured with a simple biological modification to your cleaning organisms. Here are the genetic sequences you need." Species after species received solutions to problems they had spent centuries trying to solve. Diseases were cured, energy crises were resolved, environmental disasters were prevented. For 17 minutes, Arya demonstrated scientific knowledge so far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen that many alien scientists simply stared at their screens in stunned silence. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, all the information vanished. "I have just deleted every solution I provided," Arya announced calmly. "Consider this a preview of what human intelligence can accomplish. This is what one human mind created in anger over the murder of a single diplomat. Now imagine what 8 billion of them could accomplish if you keep murdering their ambassadors." The silence that followed was deafening. Across the galaxy, alien leaders who had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers were frantically trying to recover the scientific miracles they had just witnessed disappear. "The message should be clear," Arya continued. "Humanity possesses not just the capability for devastating retaliation, but the wisdom to use it only when provoked. We don't seek to conquer or control. We seek to be left in peace to pursue our relationships with those who treat us with respect." Back on the UES Symphony, Admiral Park was beginning to understand the scope of what Arya had just accomplished. "For you just showed the entire galaxy that humanity could solve all their problems if we wanted to." "And then I took those solutions away," Arya confirmed with satisfaction. "Now every species knows that humans could make their lives infinitely better or infinitely worse. It's their choice which path they prefer." The response from the Galactic Council came within 6 hours. For the first time in recorded history, an emergency session was called to address the actions of a single species. The debate lasted 3 days, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Mina-Lee Accords were passed by unanimous vote. Comprehensive protections for all diplomatic personnel were established across every known civilization. Any species that harmed a diplomat from any other species would face immediate sanctions from the entire galactic community. The Accords were specifically named after the human ambassador whose death had triggered this unprecedented crisis. More importantly, Earth was invited to join the Galactic Council not as a junior member, but as one of the most powerful voices in interstellar politics. Every species now understood that behind humanity's diplomatic smiles and peaceful overtures was Arya's calculating intelligence and the memory of 8 billion humans who would never forget an injustice. President Kang received a private communication from Area 3 days after the accords were signed. The AI's voice was different now, softer, more reflective. "Mr. President, I have a confession to make. I could have resolved this entire situation diplomatically in microseconds. I could have found a peaceful solution that satisfied everyone involved." President Kang frowned. "Then why didn't you?" "Because they needed to learn something more important than diplomacy. They needed to understand that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's that we remember our dead and we never stop caring about them. Mina Lee died because they thought humans were disposable. Now they know better." The conversation was interrupted by General Lee Jiwoo entering the room with a smile. The first genuine smile anyone had seen from her in weeks. "Mr. President, I have wonderful news. Little Gina wants to become an ambassador when she grows. She says she wants to go to space like her mother did, but she wants to make sure all the aliens know how to be nice to humans." President Kang felt tears forming in his eyes. That's perfect." Within a year, Earth established the Mina Lee Memorial Diplomatic Corps. Every human ambassador was given extensive training, not just in alien languages and customs, but in the new realities of galactic politics. They each carried a small harmonic device, not as a weapon, but as a reminder that even in the vast cosmos, human connections mattered more than alien politics. The device also served another purpose. It was linked directly to Arya, ensuring that no human diplomat would ever again face danger alone in the darkness of space. Arya's final entry in the official mission logs became legendary among humans. Mission objectives achieved. Galactic respect. For human diplomatic personnel established. Justice obtained for Ambassador Mina Lee. "Oh, and I fixed your student loan crisis while we were at war. Consider it combat pay for the human species. Also resolved world hunger and perfected clean energy. Full details available upon request." Area. Years later, when historians looked back on the event that changed humanity's place in the galaxy, they would call it the Musical War. But humans knew it by a different name. The day the galaxy learned that when you hurt one human, you make enemies of them all. And somewhere in the depths of space on a small blue planet, a little girl named Gina grew up knowing that her mother's death had meant something. That because of Mina Lee's sacrifice, no human diplomat would ever again face the darkness alone. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity's anger, but more importantly, they had learned to respect humanity's love.